There's no great incentive, especially for a classic rock act, to produce new music. The showmanship of it, particularly with Rick Wakeman and Keith Emerson, and the beautiful melodic textures of Tony Banks, I just suddenly was like, I want to play keyboards. The 80s sound really dragged into court and found guilty and sentenced to death in 1990.
Hello and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm thrilled as always to be here with you. I'm really pleased to introduce our episode where we talk to Mr. Lawrence Gowan. Now, our Canadian listeners will recognise that name absolutely immediately, as will a lot of people from around the world for different reasons. So Lawrence has had an absolute stellar career in his own right as a solo artist over the past 40 years. Both Canada, US and internationally. But also since 1999, he's been the keyboard player and vocalist with Styx, which are obviously an iconic act who still continue to release high-quality albums. And we do spend some time initially talking about their amazing release from last year and go a little bit back over the Styx back catalogue, Lawrence's own solo career, and talk more broadly about his amazing keyboard rig and approach to music. So lots and lots to enjoy here. I'll let you jump in and have a listen, and I'll talk to you at the end of the show. Lawrence, I can't thank you enough for joining us. As I said before we recorded, it's particularly generous of you, given that you're in the middle of a tour and you've got a big Saturday night gig tonight.
Well, there's that, but there's also my intrigue with anything Australian. So I wanted to take advantage of it. Yeah, but we do have a show tonight. We played in Atlanta last night, and then we drove. As people might have guessed, I'm still on the tour bus. I sleep well on a tour bus. My pajamas are hardly wrinkled at all. And so we're here in Charlotte, North Carolina tonight.
And speaking of Australia, even though most of our audience is in the US and Canada, I know It's been an interesting point of fact for you, Lawrence. I don't believe either as a solo artist and definitely not with Styx, you guys have never been down to Australia. We need to change that.
I think we should. Sadly, we have not. Todd Circuitman, our drummer, was just in Australia for the last couple of weeks. He did a whole tour of drum clinics and master classes. And yes, he reminded us of that fact yet again. And I have relatives there, like a good number of relatives. I have 3 aunts that moved there from Ireland and several cousins, so many of whom I've never met. So I have all kinds of reason to want to go there.
Yes, absolutely. And hopefully we can remedy that. So I do want to start off, Lawrence, just talking about the current tour with Styx. And I've seen lots of videos of the current tour, and it's an incredible show and still incredibly high energy and a great variance across, the back catalogue of Styx. Just tell us about the current tour, the preparation you did for it, and how you still maintain that massive energy and putting on such a great show.
Yeah, well, I think one of the best things in life is if you're any good at something, don't stop. And that seems to be, I think that might be our most powerful tool, is that the band just doesn't stop. Because once you do, especially once you've reached a certain age, it gets a lot harder to crank up that machine again. So we play about 100 shows a year. So much of the music world has turned to the live aspect of it as being so central to the existence of a band. And obviously recording and coming up with new things and all that, that's all part of it. But ultimately, the experience of standing on stage, as we just did a few hours ago, and looking at thousands of people with their arms in the air and big giant smiles of ecstasy on their faces in just a euphoric state is very bonding. It's a very bonding experience for the band, and of course for the band with the audience. And that is energizing, quite frankly. It just gives you motivation. Motivation is one of the hardest things to kind of perpetuate. But there's nothing like a live rock concert that just makes that happen consistently. Music can never let you down, and playing music in front of people and what happens in that, inexplicable, really. There's really no way of articulating what it is that happens at a great live rock show that is just extremely energizing.
And I mean, how do you wind down, Lawrence? I mean, as you said, you played last night in Atlanta. You had to jump on the bus. You're there in North Carolina this morning. What is your wind down process nowadays?
I'm going to bore you to tears with this one, David. For me, you see, it's funny. In your 20s, your 30s, somewhat in your 40s, the party after the show is really what you're looking forward to. That's going to, the party, at a certain point, the party after the show begins to really inhibit or at least decrease the quality of the show the next night. It has a propensity to do that. And I even noticed, I remember many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, something like that, going to see the Rolling Stones and hearing there's no backstage after show. They leave the stage. I don't know what where they're off to, but basically there's nothing happens at the venue of the show. They leave. And now I can't say for sure, but I'm going to guess why. After the show, I methodically try to get the adrenaline to settle, right? Because it's at a peak, right? It's say 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night when the show ends. It's at a peak. And for me, it's like, okay, start thinking about tomorrow night now. Start thinking about the fact that you're going to need your voice. It's number one. You're going to need that energy. And so what I do is I basically have myself a couple of, glasses of water, get on the bus, ignore all the delicious smelling after show food. And right back there is my bunk. And I get in there as quick as I can. Try to do as little scrolling on social media as possible. Maybe crack a new book open, right? Read a couple of pages, and then I'm gone to the world until I wake up in the morning and get a chance to talk to David Holloway. And the fact that you stayed awake for that riveting tale is really quite admirable.
No, look, I think it's amazing. You see me as something to wake up to. I think I'd be better at putting you to sleep. So no, that's great, Lawrence. Appreciate it. Lawrence, it's been a bit over a year now since the release of Circling from Above, but
yeah,
I mean, just from a personal viewpoint, what an amazing album. And I know you're playing a number of the songs of that on the tour. Just tell us a little bit about, that's your, I think it's fourth album you've been involved with Styx. Just tell us about the process of writing that album, how happy you ended up with it, because it's an incredible suite of songs.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's, we don't have to put records out if we're not pleased with them. And when we concluded the making of Circling from Above, we just get that excited feeling of, I think people are going to like this because we like it. And believe me, there's a lot of I can't stand this goes into the putting it together. And you add up all the thousands of little, if you want to call them disagreements, frustrations, you hit walls at certain points, and then suddenly the sun comes out and the direction bursts open in a musical sense and lyrics fall into place and you just get excited. And music just does that, but you have to work at it. And we work really diligently. I won't say hard because it's music after all, but we work diligently to hammer out all of the things that we feel don't belong. And then what we're left with, it's kind of like a sculpture, I guess. What you're left with is something that we're proud of. And that's how we feel with Circling from Above, both musically and definitely lyrically. I think we went into some very interesting and relevant subject matter. And on this tour, David, because it's us in Chicago, this is our big blockbuster summer tour. It's 90% hits, both with us and Chicago. And we play one song now from Circling from Above, that's Build and Destroy, which was the first release from the record. And it has great screen content, so that helps as well in the overall presentation at the show. And we do one from our previous album, which was Crash of the Crown, which reached the #1 spot on Billboard's rock album chart. So we feel it's justifiable to have that integrated into the pretty formidable Styx set list, and that's called Our Wonderful Lives, where Tommy Shaw gets to play the banjo. This is a banjo I'm holding here.
Both amazing songs. And I do want to ask you about Build and Destroy, because it's incredibly, you're a co-writer on that. And just tell us about the development of that song. And the lyrics are very powerful. It's very topical about, how just as humans, we tend to build things up and then build them down or destroy them again. Just tell us about the process of even getting that song written. So it began, the sort of genesis of that song is the seed of the song was I had the keyboard part 80% done. It was all the opening, the verses, the chorus stuff. Played it for Will Ivankovich, our producer and co-writer and band member. And he said, yeah, there's something here. We'll swing back to it. Because we were in the midst of doing about 2 or 3 other songs at that point. And about 6 months later, 4 or 5 months later, I brought it up again. I said, this works as an instrumental piece. And I got a name for it, Build and Destroy. And he went, yeah, that's been sticking in my head too.
about a month went by from there, and now we've completed just about. I think we had 2 songs still to go. And he said, let's take a look at that again. And this was in Nashville. So Tommy Shaw came into the studio, and the 3 of us, this is always a good writing tandem, because the 3 of us begin to look at it seriously and spend some time. We spent about 2 days, really bashing through it and trying to figure out what Build and Destroy means and how to apply that to that music. And then, Tommy made some great comments lyrically. Will and I bashed out a bridge to the piece. So all those little puzzle pieces began to connect. And then when we finished it, we realized we really liked this subject because we really explored it a lot lyrically. And the idea that the notion, the reality that humankind, we come up with such phenomenal inventions. And every time there's an incredible positive effect it has. And a corollary of sometimes just as much negative comes along with it. So you're like, are we really better off? But that's part of human invention. That leads us to the next invention and trying to mitigate any of the negatives that came along and hang on to as many of the positives as we can. So it's just part of the human condition, I suppose. And it makes for good subject matter with a band that leans into, from the pop into the progressive and rock kind of areas. It's good. It's interesting lyrically to go into that sort of thing. And as I say, it works really well in the live context as well.
Certainly does. No, amazing song. And probably just talking about songwriting more broadly across sort of the last 20 years. I mean, you have a lot of contemporaries, and I'm not going to name particular names, but there are some amazing touring bands that haven't recorded a new album in 20 years. What do you think is that part of the passion for you that, makes you so much more than, in quotation marks, a legacy act?
It's part of the lifeblood of a band, David, is constantly coming up with new ideas and then being kind of, you can either say bold enough or fool-headed enough to put that out in the public. I think that, each band is different. They're as different as families on your street. We have a lot of similarities, but really they're unique setups, each one of them, which is part of what I love about being in a band as opposed to being a solo artist all the time, is that you get this combined experience of, or the sum of it being greater than the individual parts. First of all, it's a long answer to that because, first of all, the recording industry has changed so dramatically now. Okay, as you know, it's probably the least lucrative part of being in a music career at this point, and that's not to say that you only follow the lucrative part, because you don't. However, it does have to be considered if you're hoping that your band lasts longer than 6 months or a year or whatever. It's part of the ongoing machinery that you have to keep the realities of the world in check and to keep a band going. I'm just trying to say there's no great incentive, especially for a classic rock act, to produce new music. Having said that, for the spirit of that band to continue and to feel like it's still reaching and that it's still got relevance and relevance as players together, we have to do it. We're compelled to find new things, new avenues, new ways of expressing ourselves as a band in order to get that feeling of forward momentum. And it's not like we set the bar very high. We've had, as you mentioned, since I've been in the band 27 years, we've only ever done 4 completely original studio albums. We've done several singles along the way, etc. Lots of live DVDs and live recordings. Some of them really significant to the lifeblood of the band. But in the last 8 years, 8 years, going on 9 years, I should say now, to have 3 albums in the climate of what it means to make a new album nowadays is actually quite remarkable. Be able to do that and play about 100 shows a year it's quite a task. So other bands may just go, we really cherish our holiday time. It's really important. We need to get away from each other. We can't navigate the squabbles that go on when you're in a creative process. We've learned to kind of navigate that in a way where we don't let it get beyond the fight of the day or the fight of the hour or the strongly held opinion that happens to be expressed at the expense of somebody else's opinion. And we know that it's tough to make a new record. It really is. So you have to really love it to put it out there and let people judge for themselves. But that's why we do it. That's for our band, for Styx, this is why we do it. And I can fully understand why other bands choose not to.
Oh, that's amazing. And I mean, you've just mentioned you've been in the band 27 years. So,
Yeah.
looking back to, I'm sure it doesn't feel like it's been 27 years, but looking back to
No.
no, looking back to 1999 when you first joined, and I mean, you were taking over some iconic keyboard parts, originally
Yeah.
recorded back in the 70s.
Mhm.
Do you remember what your learning curve was like, getting on top of the back catalogue, let alone thinking about new stuff?
I do. First of all, it's the first time that, as a solo artist, I had 14 years, 6 albums, a couple of live records, a greatest hits record. So I had a pretty complete career, multi-platinum in Canada. And I had a pretty complete career by then, and a career that I thought I would be following forever. And I am still following it. I just played a bunch of shows, 10 shows last week, 10 or last couple of weeks prior to this tour. But when you join a band, you have lots of expectations and you have a lot of learning to do. And the first one for me was, learning to play with others. Not every decision comes down to my arbitration. And so there's that. I'd liked Styx songs, and I knew them very well because they were never off the radio in Toronto, in Canada, so I was familiar with the material. But you get a different sense entirely, and you probably know this, and any of your listeners who are musically inclined. Once you get inside a piece of music, you take on a completely different level of understanding and appreciation, and you begin to get down to the nuances of a piece. And I was really very impressed, basically, with what was already there when I came into the corner office. Really, so much of it was so well crafted. The songwriting was very, very sound. The lyrics, I remember by 1999, a lot of the lyrics from the 1970s were now rather if not irrelevant, they would be kind of humorous. But the cliches they'd fall back on, they're very almost non-existent in the Styx songs, which I really liked. And I liked that I could immediately relate to the lyrics of those songs and apply them to the current day, and which is in the last century. And for the keyboard parts, I began to see with 2 extremely gifted guitarists, James Young and Tommy Shaw, there's little room to really, jam a whole lot of keyboard stuff in there. I mean, I look at Yes, and I think Rick Wakeman had much wider palette to work with because Steve had only one guitarist. But then he had a bass player that was like revolutionary as to how much to eat up in space. But their songs were composed that way. Styx had much more of a pop sense mixed with the hard rock, mixed with the prog. And so the keyboard parts, I basically try to stay almost entirely on script as to what was already there, because they're iconic bits and they're not to be messed with too much. There are some margins that I expanded upon. We doubled for example, the length of the solo in the middle of Come Sail Away. So I came up with a melody that worked on the second half of what we'd added. But the first half is note for note what was on the original record, which is what people are paying to come and see. And I think it's perfectly right anyway. So with that sort of reverence for the keyboard parts, I approached it. Now, vocally is a different story because I have a completely different voice and a different manner of singing than Dennis DeYoung, who's a tremendous singer. But rhythmically, etc., I tried to kind of follow where he plays those parts because that's what people are so accustomed to. And then small embellishments as we went through the years and as people became accustomed to my singing the songs. And I leaned a lot on Gary Loiseau, who was with us up until, I think 2015, 2014, when he left the planet. But Gary was such a great singer himself, and he really helped me to, stay within what the margin that needed to be stayed within, and then to expand where he thought, go nuts. But all along, the wonderful band was, whether it was keyboard parts or singing, they just said, be yourself. Like, add to it what you think it needs. So with that much rope, either make myself or make a quilt, I don't know, some macrame, whatever analogy you want to use, I kind of, stayed within the lines where I thought they needed to be stayed within, and then let my own personality take over, for better or for worse.
Just talking about recreating those sounds, Lawrence, obviously, because we are a podcast for keyboard players, we have many thousands that'll be fascinated. Tell us about your actual keyboard rig. I know you're a big fan of sort of Roland keyboards to a large extent, but just tell us about what you're using on the current tour.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, in order to get those sounds, you need to go right to the original source of those sounds. So I have an Oberheim. I start with, let's break it down. The synths, I start with an Oberheim OB8, And I, because Oberheim was the main keyboard most of all for synths in the Styx catalog. And I have an OB8 and an OBX8, the new one, both phenomenal keyboards. Is that the sounds on there, get them to where indistinguishable from the record. But then ability, something digital, because in a live sense, analog can let you down on an epic scale, as you know, can suddenly just go out of tune, et cetera, et cetera. Very temperature sensitive. People know all of the pitfalls of it. I happen to I've played every brand of keyboard there is, so I'm not overly pushing this at all. But back when Roland came out with the RD500, that was the first one in the 90s, it took a while for this keyboard shop in Toronto for them to convince me to give it a shot, because I played, this is not disparaging, I played Yamaha. I had a Yamaha controller that went through an emulator that did the piano sounds back then. That was the critical thing in my solo days. Finally relented and tried the Roland 500 and realized that through the PA system, it sounds completely different than it does in small speakers in a small environment. And I noticed, well, I didn't notice, our sound engineer, who I completely trusted, noticed that it's already, everything I need to do to it live through a PA is enhanced. So that converted me suddenly to Roland's, and this is not a commercial for Roland, although it'll sound like one, that they had something very together as far as the connection between keyboards and PA systems, okay, in the piano realm at least. But then, of course, when I joined Styx, that's what I wanted to play, because I kind of got the piano sounds together through that. And I got to know as well as you can get to know their, going through all of the various pages, et cetera, and all of the stuff that we tear our hair outs over. I'd gotten to know enough of it on Roland to stick with the Roland stuff. And then they came out with this. The next challenge was, okay, what am I going to do for B3 sounds? And just at that time, they had the VK. And I thought, I really like the Korg CX3, I think it is. I like that one a lot. But again, this is crazy, but I tried the VK through the PA, and Gary, who I mentioned, Gary Loiseau, said, I love the sound of that thing. I can really slot it in with the guitars. A lot of it's so much of the EQing and what's available to you as to how you can carve that sound into the overall picture. He also really liked the simulated Leslie. In fact, we tried a real Leslie with it. The real Leslie wins 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Through the PA, he preferred the simulated one. And I was like, we wasted all the time and money. But that's okay. The simulated one just speaks really, really well. And it's exposed in quite a few songs, like obviously the opening of Blue Collar Man. What do you call it? Yeah, simulated distortion that you could dial in, etc. on the thing. And I also love the fact that I could fit. I got the VKM, which is the little module, and it sits on the end of my piano, so I still grab drawbars if I need to and do those sorts of things that a B3 does, and have it all go through the weighted action of sometimes RD800 and sometimes RD2000, depending on what I'm doing. And I love a piano weighted action. I like the consistency of that in a live show. I don't want to suddenly go to a synth with a soft action and have to play that. I studio. But in a live sense, I want that physically, I know that I'm going to be playing a piano keyboard, and I got to dig in. Okay? I'm going to have to do some sweating. And so I like that. So now we go back to the synth part of it. I then would take, at first I was using XV5080 Roland again, because they had a fantastic library of vintage sounds that I could tweak them right next to my OB8. Sometimes the Mini Moog Voyager, I'd done some of the sounds on, and that's it. And then what I would do was just begin the time-consuming. Try not to use the word painstaking; it gets used a lot. Time-consuming tweak until finally the XV5080 and the OB8. I couldn't tell the difference in the studio. I could go back and forth, going which one's which. Amazing how close you can get it. Then we do the final test the OB8 next to the Roland live, or, we don't do this anymore but back when Gary was there, we play the two through the PA, and sure enough, the digital one kept winning. It also stayed in tune. It's also ready to go, and instant patch changes. So my setup today, as it has evolved, is the Roland with Styx tonight. It'll be the Roland RD800, the XV, the VKM, is the organ, and the Jupiter XM has now replaced the XB5080. So the Jupiter XM is just hugely broad palette, that tiny little keyboard, and has been reliable. I have a redundant system there. We've had to employ it usually once or twice a year. Something will happen with the power in the building or something, and at the flick of a switch, it goes. I've got a little radial mixer there, and that's 8 channels. So I've got, forward there, and he flips one switch, and I'm over to the B section, the B rig, and it's all there. And that's my sleight of hand. And again, I'm glad you have a lot of keyboard playing viewers, because the rest of you out there.
Yeah, no, people love this sort of stuff. And I'm interested even, Lawrence, because you play such a critical vocal role, you're obviously, I assume, using in-ear monitors. Do you, because of the video synchronizing and so on, are you guys running any sort of click track or backing stuff on top of all the amazing stuff you do?
Some songs, yes, some songs, no. The click track is pretty essential for, I'll give you an example, the best example. We have to use a click track in Mr. Roboto. Because although I'm playing all the main parts, the lead part and the kind of that, I think it was a Jupiter 8 that did the kind of Farfisa-ish, organy sounds and the fluty sounds. I'm playing all of those live. All of that, all those sequencer things, which normally you just hit go on a sequencer.
Yeah.
It's built into the click track, so it's precise every night. Tommy has a vocoder. He does that. I also put in some vocoder bits as well, just to fill it out. And I did those on a Roland V-synth. Yeah, the V-synth.
Oh, yeah.
But Tommy's playing those live as well. So that gives a nice big fat vocoder sound. And because the song is so click track regimented, it just sounds way better if you're playing it to a click track. Whereas Renegade, no, we just blast into that song right after. Some songs, because we start the show right now with Fooling Yourself, the very opening 16 bars, we have a click running there, because when you go on stage and you're syncing up to the intro of the video, it's kind of cool. We've got this car radio, and his hand comes in, changes the dial to one Styx song, and a man's hand comes in, changes the dial to another Styx song. Seeing the dial going like this. We need to be entirely synced to that video to start the song, because the video has to run on the timeline with it. So the first 16 bars or so are on a click, so that we're there it is, okay, and we're all synced, and then the click disappears, and Todd takes over as the click, as he is for 90% of the night.
Yeah,
so go.
Amazing insights. Thank you. That's absolutely brilliant. And obviously a key part of your rig is this amazing spinning stand of yours, which I would argue is one of the most useful mechanisms I've seen in a band, because it's not just for show, because you're doing vocals and you're interacting with the band. It plays a really useful part in the show. Just tell us about what got you into that and how it actually works so well for you.
You're exactly right. That's what the spinning stand is not, because I want to be on some variety show, spinning plates. I'll tell you that, first of all, that emerged in 1990. So basically nearly 10 years before I joined Styx, 9 years before I joined Styx. And it only emerged, David, because I had an album, my 4th album is called Lost Brotherhood. And the guitarist on that album is Alex Lifeson from Rush. So he's on the entire record. And Alex was good enough to agree to do the video with me for the title track, Lost Brotherhood. And the concept I had for the video was pretty much based on Animal Farm, Orwellian Animal Farm idea. And it was coming together really, really well. And knowing that Alex was going to be in it, and we're going to do it in a barn, an abandoned barn, and have him step out of the barn and blister an Alex Lifeson-like solo, which is the most Alex Lifeson-like solo I've ever heard. And I suddenly realized, boring part in this video, I'm stuck behind the piano singing this song. I went to the lighting company and the production company and said, what can we come up with so that I can move around but still play the piano's integral to this song? I don't want to be off the piano when there's piano playing. Videos of the 80s. I want it to be a little more authentic with the musicianship. So after much head scratching and, terrible napkin pencil drawings, we finally went, I just said, what if it could spin, if it would pivot around? And the lighting guys came up with this brilliant way of putting that together with basically parts that they had from machine shops, etc. When we started making the video, Alex comes in, the band guys come in, the crew comes in, everyone. And as they see me learning how to manipulate this thing, by the way, sorry, at first, this is not in the video, but at first with a with a 6-foot boa constrictor around my neck. Seriously, scared of snakes, but for a video, I was willing to do it. So I got this big boa constrictor on my neck, spinning this keyboard, and I'm thinking, oh, it was an albino as well. So it's coming up like this, and it's begins around. That should be the video. But anyway, that all got cut out. One at a time, everyone came up and said, so is this your new live rig? And I'm like, no, it's just for this, right? But after day 2 or day 3, I think 3 days of shooting, and after seeing Alex come out of the barn and rip this solo, I thought, I need something like this live. I need this to engage the audience, not have it that half the people have to look at my back half the night. Or Styx saw me with that when I did a couple of shows with them, opening for them in 1997. So when I joined in 99, as we were about to start the rehearsal, I went, because I had it, but I just set up a traditional setup that they normally would use. JY goes, hey, where's the spinning thing? And I went, it's in a case there because I brought all my stuff. I mean, do you want it? And I went, Tommy goes, yeah, get that thing up here. So up it came. They looked at it and went, yeah, that's got to be in the show. That's just really good. And the great thing is for me, so often keyboard players, and I definitely have this habit, you have a tendency to push, that's my little Achilles. So is to push the tempo. When I can physically turn and face Todd, I can't push the tempo. My visual reference is perfect. My in-ears are entirely in sync with him. And believe me, if I do push beat 3 on the 3rd verse of Too Much Time in My Hands, remarkably, he will let me know after the show, which is quite an annoying resource to have at your disposal.
Love it. No, that's amazing. And so, I mean, that spinning stand, Lawrence, is that a one-off? Like, is that literally the only one in existence?
Well, the one that you see at the Styx shows is the original, with the exception of they rebuilt the tray, probably we'll call it, where the keyboard sits, exactly to the same specs, but I wanted there to be the Styx logo that can light up, so they had to rebuild it with a bit of a curve to the front of it, which is really nice. And that's been rebuilt a few times now. But you're seeing the original there. There are 4 in existence.
Wow.
We have usually one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, in case we have an overnight flyover thing and you can't fly that heavy thing. And I have 2 in Canada, one of which I was leaving in Europe for a short time, but now they're both in Canada, and same thing, East Coast, West Coast. And I have my favorites. There's one in Canada I particularly like, which is entirely stainless steel and a pain in the ass to set up for the crew guys. I feel for them every time. But that one it's heavy duty. It spins amazingly on the ball bearings because it's fully steel. This one that I normally use, it's aluminum. The bass parts are aluminum. So it's a little bit lighter and easier on local crews, etc. But the top is still stainless steel. That thing is really heavy. And, when it hits you in the region that it can hit you if you're not being careful, which is either in the head or in the crotch, it'll be quite a while before you allow yourself to make that mistake again. But I do. I mean, annually, there's definitely scars.
No, I love it. And I mean, I just feel like I'm speaking on behalf of the wider keyboard playing community that you and Jordan Rudess need to get your head together and mass produce something for all the rest of us.
Some of them have been mass produced. I know that Jordan Rudess uses a similar thing. I think he started that. I Googled him on it. I think he started about 1995 or 96 with that. And what a phenomenal player. He uses it to great effect in Dream Theater and for his own purposes. And for me, it really is, as a lead singer, it's vital that I have it that way. Otherwise I try to stay engaged with the audience throughout the show.
Yeah.
I really do. And that's the best way I can do it.
And so now, Lawrence, I'm really keen to go back to sort of your solo career, because just being aware of time. So I know I'm going to skip over your musical upbringing a little bit. I mean, you obviously did some really formal training and got a diploma with, classical piano and so on. I'm really interested in just what you learnt in those initial years of education, and even your very early stuff with, I think you played with Ronnie Hawkins and stuff. Just tell us about those years and what you learnt as a foundational musician.
I'll try to encapsulate it as much as I can. I wanted to be a musician from the moment I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. Okay, so there's that. Now we roll ahead to the 70s when I played guitar initially, and piano I started learning because my mom thought it would be a nice addition. But when I was about 14 years old, the keyboard playing in rock band with, with Rick Wakeman, Tony Banks, Keith Emerson, Elton John, Freddie Mercury. I can go on and on. I initially loved Nicky Hopkins and Billy Preston because they played in the Stones and Beatles, and I love their playing. But both of them very kind of R&B or blues-based ways of applying piano. And then suddenly the classical influence was undeniable. Well, obviously it's there in the keyboard players I just mentioned. And not only that, but the showmanship of it, particularly with Rick Wakeman and Keith Emerson, and the beautiful melodic textures of Tony Banks. I just suddenly was like, I want to play keyboards, and not only that, but I played guitar in one band in high school. I played keyboards in the other. The one I played keyboards in got booked more. But anyway, classical music became a vital source of how to get my playing ability up to, where I felt it needed to be. So I went all the way through, left high school after grade 12 and the Royal Conservatory full time, and just got an ARCT, which is an associateship with the Royal Conservatory. It's kind of the same as the Royal Academy in England, which I saw that Rick Wakeman and Elton John had gone to. So I wanted to basically be able to play what they could play, and not be technically inhibited. So once that was kind of there, it was always with the intention of being in a rock band and writing my own songs and usable vocabulary. That's basically what it was for. And so by the time I got to playing in front of, playing as a professional at the age of 19, I had enough technical ability to basically approach anything that was in the rock. Then, as you say, I finally got my record deal as a solo artist with Columbia Records in Canada, and made my first album, and it failed to be a commercial success. That's always part of my solo shows, is the fact that people loved that record so much. And where were they when I needed them? But anyway, subsequently it did really well, but initially it failed. Ronnie Hawkins happened to be, I was in pretty bad debt from my previous band with a truck, lights, and PA, and a gigantic bank loan. And Ronnie Hawkins started using my truck and my PA and lights, and with our sound engineer. And suddenly Stan Celeste, this wonderful piano player that he had in his band, had to go in for some medical reasons. And Ronnie asked, hey, guy, that we rent his PA and he plays piano. Yeah, bring him out. Let's see how he does. Well, when I went out, I'm very, very into 50s rock and roll, particularly Little Richard. And in the sound check, I played a few Little Richard songs. And Ronnie, I just met him. He goes, "We got to put that in the show tonight, son." If people don't know, Ronnie Hawkins is this kind of legendary guy in Canada because he came from Arkansas around 60 and basically brought rock bands to these jazz clubs in Toronto. He brought his own rock bands, and eventually his band was so good that they became the band. Robbie Robertson and Levon Helm and Garth Hudson, that's how good they were. And then Bob Dylan came into the club one night and stole his band away. So these are all stories you can look up in the past. But anyway, it's 1984. I'd come home from making my second album, and that's right when Stan was, and they had delayed the release of the record. They wanted to release it in January of 1985. So for the next 6 months, I played as Ronnie Hawkins' piano player. So I played some of the special guests we had. I mean, we had Bo Diddley for a whole week. And then suddenly I had this song called A Criminal Mind came out in Canada. And within 3 weeks, it was a gold record. And I'm playing at a Ronnie Hawkins show. And suddenly there's a throng of people on the piano player's side of the stage going, "You're that Criminal Mind guy." I'm signing programs and stuff like this. And Ronnie goes, "Okay, you're done with this, man."
Yeah.
And you're right. I was done with him. Next time I saw him and we played together was 10 years later, 1995, his 60th birthday, on stage at Massey Hall, which I just recently played again. And I was on stage with the greatest lineup you could ever be on a stage with. Levon Helm on drums, Jeff Healy on guitar, my friend Jeff, who stole the night, Carl Perkins on guitar as well.
Wow.
Jerry Lee Lewis on the other piano, so I'm facing him, Garth Hudson.
What a memory. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I mean, you've just mentioned, January 1985, Strange Animal was released. And I mean, I had to re-listen to it over the last few days, and it's obviously a very synth-heavy record, but it's also an incredibly original record. So as you know, going back to listen to a lot of 80s albums, you go, amazing songs, gee, you can pick the synths. I don't feel it was as obvious with Strange Animal that there are some really unique sounds you'd picked out there, and it really does stand on its own really well. Do you remember what you were relying on back then to create the sounds on that album?
Perfectly. Perfectly. We were in, for people that don't know, we were recording at a place called Tittenhurst Park, which was the home of Ringo Starr, and Ringo lived there at the time. That's where John Lennon recorded Imagine. So if you've ever seen the movie Imagine, see John recording it, it's the same studio and the same setup and everything. And it's, the kitchen door is right there. We're saying all kinds of things coming through the door, making great comments throughout the record. It's a dream period in my life, keyboard-wise. And on that record, of course, it's Jerry Marotta on drums, Tony Levin on bass, and David Rhodes on guitar, and Chris Jarrett. Chris, who lives in Australia, by the way. That's the entire band on the record. Writing those songs, I'd gone from, believe it or not, this is going to shock keyboard players out there, but I was renting a CS80 and Yamaha CS80, the greatest synth maybe ever, arguably. And as I was writing the songs, I couldn't afford the rent on it anymore. I was only renting it, but with the intention of buying. So I started renting and eventually buying a Korg Poly 61, which is, to keyboard player snobs out there, and I know you're out there, that would be a huge step down. For me, it was kind of a revelation because the limitations of that keyboard, in a way, led to me, really zeroing in on the quirkiness of the sounds, which was important for these songs without me knowing it. Of those sounds. And the demos were very stripped down because it was that and a Yamaha CP70 piano, those are the two main keyboards. When we went into the studio, with the studio budget, our producer, David Tickle, rented a Fairlight. So I had Australian. And so I had basically the yin and the yang, or whatever you want, the alpha and the omega of keyboards. And the Korg stood up to every test of trying to replace it possible. It just had this character. And that's what really came through on the record. And the Fairlight was used on a good number of solos. The strings, obviously, on the record came out of the Fairlight. And, of course, the brand new keyboard of the day was the Yamaha DX7. So It got used for a couple of little marimba-type parts. And normally you'd use the DX7 for little bell sounds, but the bells that came out of the analog nature of that Korg just fit beautifully. And the sound of the guitars, and didn't get in the way. And then, of course, there was the piano at Tittenhurst Park, which I believe was the Yamaha. And I also had my Yamaha. I shipped it. Can you imagine? We shipped my Yamaha CP70 from Toronto to Ascot, England, and it's on the record as well. That's the entire keyboard palette. So Yamaha CP70, the Yamaha Grand Piano, which I think was the C7. And pretty sure if you watch the John Lennon movie, you'll see it. See Ronnie Hawkins on it. Poly 61, I still have it. It's wrapped in cellophane. Very careful with it. And the DX7 a little bit, and a good amount of Fairlight to for the horn.
Yeah, so that explains why it does hold up so well, because you've got a really nice mix of different technologies there. And I mean, mentioning A Criminal Mind, that's obviously transitioned to being a song that Styx plays. And so I assume you've just used your current rig and sampled some of those amazing sounds to recreate it, or you've taken a bit of a different approach when you play with Styx?
Different approach with Styx. With Styx, I strictly used the piano. The solo was played by JY on guitar. We even do there's a key transposition that happens at that point in the song when normally the Fairlight would play that. Tommy, rather than play the kind of chunky rhythm stuff that David Rhodes was doing, Tommy plays a similar part, drum approach, while as close to Jerry as possible, because loves Jerry. It's still a Todd Sucherman part. And no drum machine comes into it at all in the Styx version. Do you know how that came about? The very first day, I went to Tommy's place once and they said, "We'd like you to join the band," or, I went to his place to see our vocals with Ash. And I'm about to play, I think I was going to play Grand Illusion. 2 bars in, he goes, "No, stop. Don't play a Styx song." He goes, that the last song that you played is A Criminal Mind. Play that. So I played it, and at the end of it, he goes, "Okay, so we should make that a Styx song." And that's how that came. So I felt very kind of embraced by those guys, and in the first few minutes that we were together, as far as musical.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I love across your solo albums, Lawrence, the evolution and even the different, it's not genre or style, but even like the But You Can Call Me Larry album in 93, there's some beautiful ballads and piano work. I know Last Laugh is one that stands out for me. Just interested in your sort of takes on that sort of But You Can Call Me Larry album and the Good Catches Up album, those sort of latter two.
Thanks. because they don't get mentioned enough. The 80s sound really dragged into court and found guilty and sentenced to death in 1990. And if people remember that, suddenly everything 80s was bad, bad, bad. It was like hairspray and giant combs. And so Columbia Records, and they expect record sales, and I'm trying to take this into account and seeing all these big 80s bands that were filling arenas suddenly going down in flames. And I'm listening to the new Nirvana record and all the grunge things and going, oh, these guys are so cool, compared to what we were doing. And, now I absolutely, it's amazing now. I love talking about this. The 80s songs that I was very dismissive of. I think songs that I didn't, give a whole lot of weight to. I was a huge fan of the Buggles. I'll give you one. This is just one example. I was a huge fan of the Buggles. Loved Trevor Horn. Even loved him coming into Yes, believe it or not, for one record, which I thought was impossible, but pulled it off. And he's such a tremendous musician and producer and everything. But I saw that, he produced this band, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And I remember listening to Relax back then in the 80s, just thinking, before I go on stage for every solo show, I blast that song Relax through the PA because it's so good.
It is.
And I can give you 100 examples of songs, but that song, I'll just use that as one example of something that I was kind of like, oh yeah. In the 80s, we were, it was such a competitive time as well. Every aspect of that song just grabs the audience every night too, and kind of sets the bar high for us to come on and we've been playing Strange Animal from beginning to end in these shows in the last year because it's been the 40th anniversary of the record. And yes. But now back to what you brought up, which I'm glad to talk about. I decided in the early 90s, the best way for me to suddenly transition into something that was current with that decade was to actually shut off all the synths, piano stays on, and picked up the acoustic guitar mainly because I started co-writing with a guy named Eddie Schwartz, and people know Hit Me With Your Best Shot for Benatar, and the guitarist in his house. And I started picking it up again and noticing I'm going to completely different places writing bits with this instrument that I'm far less adept at playing than keyboards, but it's causing me to go to different areas, both musically and lyrically. And when I go back to the piano and play them, I'm like, I never would have come up with this on the piano, but I'm really liking it. I'm liking the singer-songwriter immediacy of the communication of it. And I guess a lot of it came from the unplugged phenomenon, etc., but basically concocted the songs that way. And there are synths on the record. They were almost entirely played by a fellow named Howard Jones, a friend of Jerry Marotta's, who produced that record. And I love those keyboards. I never would have played the parts like that. He had these great atmospheric things that he came up with, mostly on a Prophet 5 or a couple of Prophets. The acoustic guitar, the central part of that record, and some of the piano bits that go along with it. And I'm really happy because it was just shy of a platinum record. It was a gold record very soon. It had 4 top 10 songs and had disc jockeys in Canada going, do you know who this is? Because it's the guy. Yeah. It's the guy that had one name before. Now he's Lawrence Gowan, He thinks he's a prince. They had to start saying Lawrence Gowan on the because in the 80s, Columbia Records told him never, ever say his first name. Don't. One name guy like Prince, Madonna, Gowan, right? And I'm still known as that, right? But intentionally, we made the title of the album Lawrence Gowan, but you can call me Larry. I get out. It's such a trite title for an album that has some pretty serious subject matter on it. It came because I was managed by the same guy that manages Rush, Ray Daniels. And Ray has a very good sense of humor and said I should use my full name on this record. The one name thing from the 80s is not. So, we played hockey together and guys who had played hockey with, called me Larry. And Ray goes, no, you can't be Larry. Larry, that's a joke. He goes, Lawrence Gowan. Well, you can call me Larry. And I went, that's the album title. He said it offhand. Just an offhand comment, that's the album title. When I came back a week later and said, that's going to be the album title, he was like, yeah. He goes, what'd you come up with that? I said, you said it. And he went, that's a great idea.
Love it. No, that's amazing. Yeah. And anyway. So what we're talking, you've just mentioned hockey, you've mentioned Alex Lifeson and Rush. We're definitely in Canada territory. So I want to insert a couple of questions from a Canadian fan. So we have sort of members of our YouTube channel, and Tammy from Edmonton. So I'm sure you played Edmonton many a time.
Yeah.
as Gowan. So she had a couple of questions, and one of them being, you just mentioned the 80s and Manna from Heaven. Is there one song you wish that was yours that you totally love, that is an absolutely brilliant song, and you go, I wish that was one of my songs?
Yeah, shout. Flat
Tears for
out.
Fears, yep.
We toured with Tears for Fears. I opened for Tears for Fears as Gowan in 1985, all through the States, because they were trying really hard to get Columbia in the US to release the record. And they kept saying, well, wait till it goes gold. It's already gold. Wait till it goes platinum. It's already platinum. See if you can get it to double platinum. It got double platinum. See if you can get triple platinum. It got triple. Then finally they flew the whole team from New York up to Toronto to see one of 3 nights at a venue that had 15,000 people. They saw it and they basically went, no, he reminds us of a lot of Paul Young, which is like, Paul Young's a great artist, but it's a completely different thing. And it just goes to show, those people they've probably been elevated to high places in politics now. I don't know. We did so well on that Tears for Fears tour, and I loved touring with them. It was such a great band. So well, it seemed so obvious. I remember the Columbia rep in Cleveland saying to me, you must be the most frustrated guy on the planet. You've got a Criminal Minds top 20 here in Cleveland on import. Like not on import. On the regular chart, wow. You only get the records on import. So I don't want to go any further into it, but the music industry back then was very adept at being incredible gatekeepers as to who got to hear what on planet Earth. And as a result, they built this fabulous empire. This is another whole angle that we can go into with the internet completely ended up destroying, which ties into the earlier part of our conversation, David, and as to why, it's tough to make new records now for bands.
Yeah.
So once again, they had their great attributes, those major labels, they still do. Great attributes. They built it, they destroyed it.
Exactly. No, there's definitely a theme there. I love it. And Shout by Tears for Fears is a great pick, so thank you for that. And the other part that Tammy wanted me to ask was, what would today's Gowan tell 20-year-old Gowan? If you had one piece of advice for your younger self, what would it be?
Well, obviously keep dyeing your hair. That definitely works. When all else fails, come up with a goofy color and off you go. Yeah. Who's asking this question?
It is Tammy from Edmonton as well. Yeah.
Tammy. I think I know who you're speaking of because she sent quite a few social media messages when we were in Edmonton. I think she plays music herself really well. But yeah, first of all, everything's going to be all right because in the year when you'll be turning 70, you'll still be playing music for people. That's number one, because the anxiety that you have as a 20-year-old is so, in some ways, it can be heartbreaking when you look back on it, just the desperation that you have of, at that age, and I'd come out of the conservatory and I'm playing in bars and most of the time going over extremely well, sometimes getting beer bottles thrown at me. There's some disparaging moments, desolate place that you can be one moment and then suddenly you're in this fabulous thing of like, we're going to do it, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And then there's the wall. I would just say that it's just stay as devoted as you are to music and it's all going to work out. Luck is going to have its way with you. Every successful act on earth, luck is a factor that comes in there. Now, of course, you have to do the other 50%. You have to be prepared for the lucky day when something happens. But, ultimately, Tammy, it's like this. Whenever I'm asked, what advice would you give to young musicians? I always say, I have no advice other than this. Fall in love with music because it will never let you down. Try not to fall in love with the music business because it will only let you down. It just is, it's built that way. I'm grateful for all the things that have happened to me in the music business, but my love of music is completely untainted. I can go into all kinds of reasons as to why the music business has betrayed me over and over. I'm resentful, but I'm not resentful. It's done great things for me as well. Okay. But ultimately music has never done anything bad to me at all. It's only been great. So fall in love with that.
And so last two questions, Lawrence, and one's a super deep one, but I think it's an important one. What legacy do you want to leave in a music sense when you retire in 30 years?
30 years seems a little bit short of a time, David. If you want to say, I'd be only 100 at that point. Or 99. Honestly, I would love to leave this earth with one melody that people are still whistling or somehow have stuck in their heads, or someone's grandchild's grandchild hears that piece of music and goes, what is that? I think that's the most magical thing. These last couple of days, I've been trying to learn that incredibly slow piece by Satie. Gymnopédie, numero un, gymnopédie. And I just think, here's this man who's long been dust, and I'm playing this absolutely heartbreaking melody at the slowest speed I've ever played. It requires almost no technical prowess at all, but requires incredible emotional connection in order to convey the sweetness, but the bittersweetness of this melodic piece from this man who was, by all accounts, kind of a nutcase.
Yeah.
And the fact that his melody has survived is such to me, as a musician, that's such an accomplishment, because a great melody just never goes away. So hopefully there might be one sliver of one that in 30 years' time, still clings on a little bit.
Yep. No, I think, and I have no doubt that will be the case, Lawrence. And then our last question, you just mentioned one inspiration, but I'm really keen to hear your Desert Island discs. So 5 albums that, if you had to pick them, what would they be?
I hate it and I love it. Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm just I have to just rip off 5, not rip off, just give me 5 albums. I'm going to say for the 19, just because they still emotionally get me going. I'll say Sgt. Pepper. Okay. I'm going to pick very obvious things. Okay. Sgt. Pepper would be there. Selling England by the Pound would be there.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really tough. Probably Goodbye Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah.
Probably A Night at the Opera.
Nice.
This is where it gets so tough, because now it just opens like crazy, because I don't know if it's going to be, if it's Close to the Edge, or if it's Abbey Road, or if it's Sticky Fingers. I don't know that 5th choice. I wish I could say what it is. And I can't.
It is hard.
It's too hard. I can't name album number 5. The first 4.
No, that's okay.
I'll commit to those first 4, but I can't go to number 5. And the Revolver's in there as well. And so is Let It Bleed, and so is Are You Experienced?
No, nothing wrong with 4. We have people that do 6 and do 4, and our last guest chose 0. So it's all good. Look, I can't thank you. Zero probably is the best choice.
Oh, by the way, whenever this question, we're assuming you do have a record player, right? On this desert island.
That's right.
And,
yes.
and you have access to electricity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is some slight logical flaws.
That sounds like a great island to me.
It does. Now, speaking of a great island, you've certainly created lots of creative islands over your career, and there's lots more to come. I can't thank you enough for taking the time, as I said, particularly on a performance day, with your amazing voice and, keeping it safe. So we really appreciate it. We'll keep in touch, and we've got to get you down under. That's all I know.
I agree with that. And it was a pleasure talking to you, David. Honestly, I didn't think we'd go this long, but incredibly, insightful questions. And it's been a pleasure. This is the kind of stuff we talk about in the dressing room and all throughout the day anyway.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Lawrence. What a guy, and what a career, with lots more still to come. I can't thank Lawrence enough for his time. It's just absolutely amazing speaking with him. As I said in the introduction and at the end, particularly on a tour day, do check out both Styx, if you're in the US, obviously, and you're going to catch their upcoming tour, you're in for a treat based on the videos I've watched. But we will link to a couple of their live videos. These guys are still at the top of their game. Lawrence's voice is incredible, and he's playing on top of that. It's just a masterclass in performance. So, yeah, highly recommend it. So, again, thank you for listening. A big thanks to our gold and silver supporters, including, I'll start with the lovely Tammy Catcher from Tammy's Musical Stew, who posed some questions to Lawrence because she's a supporter of the show. Thank you, Tammy, and I hope you're happy with the answers. The amazing Derry Evans from the beautiful land of Wales. Thank you, sir, for your support. The amazing Troy Kinnett, troykinnett.com, TroyKinnett.com. Troy is keyboard player and accordion player with John Mellencamp, but also plays and collaborates in many other ways. Do check out Troy's website. Mike and the team at midnightmastering.com, Dave Bryce and the team at musicplayer.com, and last but not least, the brilliant Paul Heaton, or the Dreamscapist, on YouTube. Do check out Paul's amazing channel if you're after some good music for relaxation, meditation, ambience, whatever you would like to call it. It is amazing. So thank you again to all of our supporters. Do keep in touch. We're on all the socials. We're on editor at keyboardchronicles.com. We're in a bit of a busy time at the moment. We're doing what we're calling a Masters series. And it's really exciting talking to some of these truly iconic players. Every player we talk to is amazing. And so it's been a flurry of bucket list moments, which we're obviously thrilled to be part of, and we're thrilled that you're part of them as well. So again, thank you. And until we talk next time, keep on playing.